Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Love Not Fear. I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear, and I want to talk a little bit today about migration. People have been asking me for my opinion of migration for a while now, and they tend to expect me to come down on one side or the other, either all migrants are scroungers or we should have open borders and everyone should travel freely. And you both who've known me for a while will know that my response has been a bit more nuanced than that. I've been thinking about this subject for a very, very long time. As a young man in my 20s, I was heavily involved, well, not heavily involved, but heavily interested in the work of Survival International, that deals with the rights of indigenous people around the world. And I thought long about the atrocities that have happened in the past. The Pilgrim Fathers traveling on into America, and the way that they and the other settlers in America treated the native people. What they should have done is when they landed, was to go to a native chief in the area and submit themselves to his rule and learnt their customs and adopted their customs. But instead of that, they thought they were superior, and they decimated a whole culture. Many nations of native people were decimated. Captain Cook did something similar. He committed atrocities as he travelled around the world. And the Raj in India, as of course, is another example. The East India Company, the way they treated the indigenous people was absolutely disgusting. So I then had a personal experience because I was an immigrant. I was an immigrant for 17 years in Spain. We like to call ourselves expats, but basically we're immigrants. And I saw the worst of the Brits abroad over there that disrespected the native population, thought that they were superior to the native population. And I saw the ones like myself who made an effort to fit in and to integrate. And we fared so much better than the ones that made a fuss and couldn't accept anything that wasn't what they were used to back home. So all these different experiences have led me to come up with basically three principles. I'm not trying to impose any rules on anybody. That's not my job. I'm just going to suggest three principles that if we adopt them, then we can have open borders and free travel. And if they had been adopted by our ancestors hundreds of years ago, we wouldn't have had all the atrocities that were committed against the Native Americans, against the Aborigines in Australia, against the people in the Indian subcontinent, and in lots of other places around the world. Indeed, the Spanish conquest of South America and Central America would have gone very, very differently. It wouldn't have been a conquest, it would have been a settlement, a peaceful settlement, if only they'd have adopted these rules. And if we can adopt these rules now, these principles, we can stop anything like that ever happening again. And that's my aim here. So I don't care whether you're a white family moving to America, or a brown family, or brown, they're mostly adult males, aren't they, travelling across the English Channel in little boats. if you can only adopt these principles. So let me just tell you briefly what the principles are. Number one, sovereignty. That every place, I'm not even going to talk about countries and nations because I know that triggers a lot of you. So I'm just going to say place. And as we get more and more involved in space exploration, it might not be a country, it might even be a planet that we're talking about. And I know some of you think that visitors from other worlds are already walking amongst us, and that may or may not be true. But if we can just adopt these three principles, so sovereignty, that every place has a right to set rules and standards, laws that suit the people, the customs, the traditions of the people who live in that place. Two, universal equality. That everyone should get the same treatment. Everyone should be treated the same, regardless of race, religion, gender, vax status, sexual orientation, or any other characteristic, any of the, from a British point of view, any of the characteristics of the Equalities Act and any other characteristics you can think of. Just treat everyone the same. That also doesn't just mean don't discriminate against people, it means don't discriminate in favour of people. All this so-called positive discrimination is just nonsense. There's no such thing as positive discrimination. Just treat everyone the same. You give one group of people special privileges and the rest of the population are going to hate them, and then you're going to say that they're racist. No, they're not racist. They're just objecting to this minority of the population being given special privileges. The third principle of migration, of peaceful migration. Let's call it the principle of peaceful migration. That you travel to a different place because you like it there better than you like it back home. Okay? If we have open borders, and that's what I want eventually, with no passports and no visas and free movement of people and goods around the globe, I would love that. But we could only do it if we have the principle of peaceful migration, which is that if you don't like the laws or the customs in the country, in the place where you were born, you're free to move somewhere else, but only on the condition that you love that place better than the place you left. And you don't try to make the place you're moving to resemble the place that you left. Or to put it another way, you travel and settle, if you want to settle, with respect for the customs and traditions of the people who were there before you. And you try to integrate and fit in. You make a serious effort to fit in. After a few years, maybe 5 or something, apart from possibly the colour of your skin, it shouldn't be in any way possible to tell that you weren't born there. You should have integrated completely. Otherwise, why go? Why not stay at home? Another way of saying that would be to say that there's a difference between a place being multicultural or multi-ethnic. If it's multi-ethnic, that's fine, that's great. People from all over the world mixing happily and peacefully, that's wonderful. But multicultural, no way, no way. If you come to my country, adopt my culture. If I come to your country, I'll adopt your culture. That way there won't be any friction, Won't be any bad feeling. I know it's a little bit more complicated than that because some people have been bombed out of their homes. I admit that. So the principle of sovereignty, of course, is that it would end all wars, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not. People say the existence of borders causes wars. I mean, that's backwards. That's nonsense. What causes wars is crossing somebody's border illegally with arms. So if all the armies and navies and fighter planes and missiles stayed behind their own borders, there couldn't ever be any more wars, could there? It's not borders that cause wars. It's crossing borders illegally with bad attitude, with bad intention, that causes wars. So that just about sums it up. If we can adopt these principles, then yeah, let's have open borders. Let's have free movement. Let's people come and go and settle anywhere they want. Borders shouldn't be to keep people out. Borders should just be administrative areas in which the governing body, hopefully democratically elected and fully representative, which we don't have anywhere in the world at the moment, makes laws in accord with the customs and traditions of the people who live in that place. Namaste.